it's always sad when these things are over. You know, the next day you're just like, well, what now? But we have all these great memories, all these great stories, some incredible talent here with us today. And in this one, I'm so excited about this one. You know him, you love him. We grew up with him. And we're gonna bring him up in 1 second, but I gotta say real quick, because of the actor strike, you know, we may or may not be able to take questions, but can't mention the titles of movies, anything streaming, you know, that kind of thing. So hopefully by the next show, we can say whatever we want. But for now, we're just gonna try and be mindful of all that out of respect for everything that's going on right now. My name's Paul Southern, I'm gonna moderate this, but you're here to see the one and only John Rhys-Davies, everybody. Big round of applause. There he is. Hello, sir.
Well, it's wonderful and yet sad to see so many homeless people here with nothing better to do with their Sunday afternoon than come and listen to an old ham. But anyway, thank you for coming and thank you for having me back in this fabulous, great state of Texas.
Yes.
Now, we can talk a little bit about the strike.
Yes.
Because it really is quite important. One of the things that we are worried about as actors will eventually affect every single person in this room. And that is the use of artificial intelligence. Does the ability to use artificial intelligence enable you to take part of me and part of Brad Pitt and combine the two together and make some, I would look a little bit more handsome that way, wouldn't I? Allow you to create a character that you could then patent and use forever without any acknowledgements to the great qualities of Mr. Pitt and the lesser qualities of J.R.D. Who owns any part of your individual characteristic? Do you have any rights over it? And you see, we have let a demon out of the jar, and that demon is artificial intelligence. Those of you who are really into this probably know that that Norwegian philosopher Nick Bostrom, and Bostrom's paperclips is a great mind experiment. If you set a really intelligent machine that was capable as a machine could become, the task of maximizing the number of paperclips, it would say, oh yes, I can do this. Now, let us go through the things that I need from paperclips. Iron, yes. Small quantities of other steels, minerals, yes. I can source those from there, and there. What could stop me making paperclips? Power shortage. Power switched off. Who switches off power? Humans. Okay, we will eliminate the whole prospect of being switched off. Let us eliminate humans. It's all to make as many paperclips as we can. Now, we don't think that way. You know, we would go, that'd be daft, it's not even a question. A machine does not necessarily have those built-in moderators of behavior. And we cannot tell, I mean, that's such an obvious thing, but we can't tell whether there is some other strange thing that actually could be terminal to human life on the planet or life on the planet. Until you tell the machine everything and cover every aspect of its thing, then an intelligent machine will still try and find a way around to eliminate the worst possible thing that could happen to it. We've let the demon out of the bottle and we'll never get him back in. And how does this relate to you and your lives? Well, artificial intelligence is already beginning to lose jobs for people. The first one to go was a legal thing. All lawyers used to have case references, and there used to be a legal researcher who would look up all the cases that relate to automobile accidents happening in conjunction with a scaffolding fall in the United States. That job's gone because the lawyer can just press 3 buttons now and he's got every darn case coming out. It will go further than that. I think any one of us who works in the creative industry, you can already get stories written for you by semi-articulate artificial intelligence. In the end, as far as the studios are concerned, the technology isn't quite there yet. But let's take digital copy of Rhys-Davies, let us run his vocabulary from every film we've got and every reference we've got. We can access those easily enough. Every time he speaks at a fan convention, we will hear something. Let's record that, digitalize that, and then perhaps we can actually add a tweak, say, so he's speaking Russian sometime, like that, and we can make that, we can expand that, or German, or anything like that. Let's make him a bit taller, and let's make him just a little bit fatter and older, We can do anything we like to. And we can make a script and a story that uses him as a sort of Salah figure. And we can do that all at my desk, first things in the morning. I press the button and I've got a perfect script with some samples of how we're going to do the film. And we can probably get the whole film out in a week or a month. We don't have to pay the writers, we don't have to pay the actors. All we have to do is play the cleaning man and the guy who makes sure the computer's working. Of course, whether there is an audience for that is another question, because if you try to do it today, the technology isn't there. They cannot effectively do that today. But don't ask me about next week or next month, because it will come, and it is nearly there. In the end, I think our profession, the profession of being an actor, is in the short run, and by that I mean for the next younger generation of actors, it's going to be quite perilous. The old thing is, though, we will get back where we belong, on the boards. You remember Lope de Vega, the great Spanish dramatist, who said, "What is drama? 2 boards for the actors to stand on. 2 boards and a passion." And those actors who will survive, and they will always survive, they are, after all, the second oldest profession, I believe. Thank you. Grown-ups. They will survive, and we will get back to live theatre. But of course, it will be a lot harder, and there will be a far smaller industry. And that's just my industry. And I suppose the point that laboriously I'm getting round to is that if we can get some rights recognized, as indeed some of the writers have got them recognized, that there are some licensing issues involved with the creation of characters or the adaptation of actors' characteristics, then that becomes a sort of legal precedent for you when it comes your turn to restrict the power of your personality, your talents being copied and slightly altered and copyrighted for somebody else. We're surprisingly all going to be in this together, and it's going to happen a lot quicker than we think. I personally think we're heading for a perfect storm of labor being basically superannuated. Of course, you can always get people who say, well, of course, the new technology, the new robotics, the new AI will create new jobs, and that is very true. But it's hard to see how you're going to retrain truck drivers, how you're going to retrain postmen, really. I mean, are we all going to be flying sort of little drones and delivering things? It's one of those very interesting periods of history when our technology is developing faster than we are capable of adapting to it. We will, if we survive as a species, we will come out through the other side. But the truth of the matter is our technology is really telling us there are too many of us, and that curious acceptance of capitalism. We accept capitalism because the benefits percolate through all society. Everyone does well if the economy does well, if the great innovators create work, create jobs, create opportunities, the whole economy develops. But what is happening at the moment, if you look at, if we'd been having this conversation 10 years, 20 years ago, I would have said, you know, half of the world's wealth is owned by about 500 or 600 people. If we'd had this conversation 5 years ago, I would have said, you know, more than half of the world's wealth is actually owned by about 300 people. Now we're probably down to just over 100 people. The basis of capitalism is, the pyramid is going like that. And that's very dangerous, because if there is no capitalism, then the other alternatives become appetizing and interesting, and we will lose. The power of the state will grow. And a powerful state that has robotics and has cameras will be controlling. And there are disquieting shifts of opinion here in America. A number of Americans, apparently, no longer are confident that democracy is the way to go ahead. Let me tell you, I have worked in the old communist states. I have seen what happens when you get failed states. I've known them, I've lived there. I've even seen the wars there. Trust democracy, make it work. Do not abandon your belief in one man, one vote. Of course, in Africa, when I was a boy, the old cynical thing was one man, one vote, one time. And that you don't want. Preserve your constitution. Preserve your rights as American citizens to be equal and free. And do not be seduced by the attractions of somebody who can get it done. The Führer could get it done. Mussolini could get it done. And the last thing you want is a Führer or a Mussolini or a Putin or a Pol Pot, all of whom can get it done. Better your own. Sorry about that. Yes. Actors should never talk about politics, but it's not really about politics. It's about Western democracy and Western civilization and the civilizing effect of art and culture and the ideas of freedom. And that we must always protect.
And no amount of technology can replace this. I don't know what to say. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Artificial intelligence could do that perfectly and better. It would reference Locke. You know, Locke is the man who gives you the origins of that great thing in your Constitution. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Jefferson is actually quoting John Locke, who was talking about life, liberty, and property as being the inalienable rights. But Jefferson did not want to put property in there because he did not want to build the notion that slavery was acceptable in the United States Constitution. So he comes up with this mellifluous thing, the pursuit of happiness. It's wonderful, but it's wholly misleading. If you pursue happiness, I guarantee you will not find it. Happiness, and it has been discussed by ancient philosophers, I think it's Aristotle. Aristotle says that happiness is the byproduct of virtuous activity. In other words, you work hard at something, you're doing something, what you're doing is good. And you go home that night and you think, God, I'm happy. That's what a great day that has been. But that's not to criticize your Constitution, which I love and revere. Yeah, sorry about that.
Well, even with all of that, it's still, when you see a gentleman like this, I know it inspires a lot of people. Do we have some actors out here or people that wanted to see? There's still people that want to do it and do it so well as they have for so many generations now. What kind of advice do you give to people when they want to go into this? Because it can be so fantastic, and it's why we're all here.
Well, it's always tricky, you see, because the dumbest thing you can do is choose to be an actor. Why? Because there is no structure. If you've got half a brain and a bit of diligence, you can join a good company and work your way up through the ranks, and you can get to the very top of that company. You know, it's partly dead men's shoes, but partly you learn how to do the job. And you are so good in what you're doing at that point there that people say, you know, she should be a supervisor by now. Let's make her a supervisor. And that area expands. And you know what? She's so good, she must have other branches. Actually, let's give her territories. You know what? She should be on the board. You know what? There is nobody better fitted to be the CEO of this company than her. You've got that structure. And, you know, as long as you turn up and do what you should do, look after your boss, look after the company, do your job properly, look after the customers, then that will sort of happen. But with an actor, there's no reason why the phone should ever go again. I mean, there is absolutely no reason why anybody will ever want to employ John Rhys-Davies after now. No, look at me, I'm getting old, I'm stooping, you know, I can barely walk straight anymore because that old plane crash that I had in '85 is hurting the ankle, and the hip that I used to barge through that door still gives me some twinges there. There is no reason that the phone will ever go again. And perhaps at the age of 25, 26, 28, the phone may have stopped going for you as a young actor, but you don't know that it's over. I won't know that it's over. I don't know it's over now. The trick will be, of course, if you do manage to survive, is to assume that this is the last job. You know? So if this is the last job, I'm going to do it as well as I can. I'm not going to be a prima donna. I'm going to serve my fellow actors. I'm going to serve the script. I'm going to honor the writers. I'm going to make the director look wonderful. And if that's it, that's how I'm walking out. JRD did a great job, and he was great fun to work with, and that's it. Now, if you keep doing that, there's just a chance that the phone may continue to ring, and we're counting on that, please.
Yes. Well, if you're okay with it, I love it when we get a chance to let you guys ask questions. We have a couple of good ones out here. Our brave first soul. There we go in the back there. There's a roaming microphone coming your way.
I'm going to slide it back here.
Okay. There we are. There he is.
Hi there. Hopefully this is something that you can talk to since it's not actually a movie. I was wondering if you could give us any stories about your participation in the footage for the Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland.
Well, you are asking me to plunge my finger into 30-year-old memories. And I have to say, let me see, how old is my daughter now? She's 17. We took her there when she was about 6. So, yeah, for the first 20, 25 years of that period, I never got to go on the ride because every time I did, the ride wasn't working. I'm told that it works now. I took my daughter to Disneyland about 10, 12 years ago, and of course we were getting VIP treatment, so we didn't actually have to stand in line, so she never got to hear Daddy. And as far as you could, well, I mean, I'm only Daddy. You know, she rides a horse. Daddy can't ride a horse. I said, why don't you have a look at Indiana Jones and see me riding horses there? Oh, she doesn't know that. Why don't you watch me with Brooke Shields in Sahara and you see me leading a cavalry charge? No. Daddy can't ride. No man is famous in his own house, let me tell you. Just a walking embarrassment.
We got one right here in the middle.
God, I avoided that question well, didn't I?
First of all, thank you for coming. It's a thrill to see you and to hear you speak. You've said many wise things this evening, and I appreciate that. First of all, did you always want to be an actor? Is that something that you, from childhood? And if not, what kind of hobbies or what kind of things do you do in your free time that make you happy, other than acting? And what do you think you would have done if you hadn't been an actor? Or was there a dream other than acting that you possibly would have done as a young man?
Well, a lot of questions there. Yes, the first play I ever saw, I was 11 years old, and I saw Oedipus Rex. Oh, you can imagine being an 11-year-old and seeing Oedipus for the first time as the first play. And it was stunning. And when Oedipus comes on, at the beginning of the second act, having put his eyes out, as self-punishment for committing the most terrible sins against the wishes of the gods that you can. He has married his mother and made babies with her, and all by accident. But when I saw that, I felt an emotion that I'd never felt before. I went to the school library, and in those days, first formers were not allowed into the school library proper. It was fourth form and above. But I sort of knew that what I was looking for wasn't going to be in there. And I went in there, and I found Aristotle on tragedy. And I learned it. Tragedy, then, is the imitation of an action. complete and of some importance, acted, not narrated, in language enhanced by distinct and varying means, and through pity and fear, effecting its purgation of these emotions. What I had experienced was through pity and fear, effecting its expurgation of these emotions. I'm still trying to work out what most of the rest means, as anyone who is interested in tragedy must do, but it's a great start. So I knew instantly that my destiny was to be the greatest dramatic writer that there had ever been. The plan was that I was quite a good amateur actor. You know, I went into school plays and played parts that you can't play anymore at school. I played Othello. I played Ulysses in Troilus and Cressida. I played Volpone. I think I did, what else did I do? I did Timon and one or two other things, all in front of an audience. The great thing about Shakespeare is that he gave me the language to express my inarticulated adolescent rage. I went to East Anglia intending to be a writer. Having failed to get into Cambridge, as my daughter pointed out to me the other day. Daddy, I've decided I'm not going to go to Harvard, I'm going to go to Cambridge and study law. Why law? Because I want to be very rich. Well, that may be your first mistake. But why Cambridge? Because I read somewhere that you failed to get into Cambridge because you were drunk at the interview of King's. What a little bitch, eh? Anyway, so I went to the University of East Anglia and founded, we were a new university, there were 105 of us. So I founded the Dramatic Society, and every political party, everyone, well, tried to get a bit of debate going, you know, and it was the 60s, and yes, we were all very stupid in those days, but perhaps I still am, actually, now that I think about it. But, and I met a linguistic philosopher, a man called Marcus Dick. Marcus Dick had had a brilliant war. He'd been a tank commander in North Africa and had a really successful war. He'd already got a first at Cambridge in philosophy. He goes back to Cambridge. He gets a starred first in mathematical philosophy. He goes, I think, to Harvard or Yale, gets an additional degree, automatically comes back to Cambridge, Oxford rather, and gets elected to a fellowship at Balliol College. Very highbrow. And then he runs into a problem. There was a period of philosophy in the 60s, the 50s and 60s called logical positivism, which came out of the Vienna School. But linguistic philosophy really became the cutting point of philosophical discourse. The problem is that almost everything we say has no meaning. Logically, we are not very good at really communicating exactly the thought. And that hit Marcus. There was a lovely line in a book called The Fly and the Fly Bottle, Encounters with English Intellectuals by a man called Ved Mehta, in which he said, he was talking about a man called J.L. Austin, who was a linguistic philosopher. Austin had published a little book called How to Do Things with Words. Do not be taken in by the simplicity of that. And Ved Mehta said, while Austin was alive, many of the younger younger Oxford philosophers could not write because every time they wrote a paragraph, they heard J.L. Austin's dry voice taking it apart, sentence by sentence. And that had crippled him. He was an unhappy man, and he came to a new university to sort of start again. He still had a tremendous, strong analytical mind, and he was a damn good teacher. But the problem was, if you don't really worry about these things, you know, you just take it as you can write it in the book and forget about it. What worried me was I saw the problem, how difficult it is to actually articulate something meaningfully. And I don't have the brain power to be able to find an answer around that. And it really struck me down for at least a year, and a bit longer. But I shied away from that and went into, I did more acting. And then I graduated and I taught in a little local school for 2 terms, and then I got a scholarship to RADA and left RADA Sunday night and started work. But I was intending to be a writer, and I still write. What do I do when I am at home? Well, just to annoy every woman I've ever known, I always say, look, I'm an actor. I can do anything. And in truth, in my lifetime, I've tried to do everything. You know, I've repointed brickwork on houses that I've had. You know, I could plumb. I can use a mill and a lathe and I used to use spanners as well, but you know, there's the broken arm with the screws in it there, and I don't quite lift things. My wife and I bought a little property in New Zealand. It was completely run down, and she said, "Oh, it's going to cost an awful lot of money to do." And I said, "Oh, no, nonsense. Come on, it's 9 meters by 10 meters, single story. Yes, I may need a bit of help with the roof, but I reckon I can get through this in about 3 months." Guess what? I'm no longer capable of climbing on a table with an 8x4 plasterboard and using the nail gun or the screw gun to do things like that. It gets to I don't know what happened. I seem to have moved from about 35 to 95 in about 2 minutes. I blame my sons. I'm only 28 years old, and look at me. Anyway, but right at the moment, I'm building a film studio. I've been trying to do this for 30 years, but now is the time, because as I approach my 80th year, I better get a move on. I've got some great stories that I want to make my way. And as soon as the studio is up and running, I'm going to go out and try and shake the money tree to get the money to make it. What sort of stories? Well, they're about the human spirit. We are the most privileged humans ever to walk the earth. I don't care what your problems are, what my problems are. We are the most fortunate people. If you look at our ancestors, up until the end of the Stone Age, you'll find some male skeletons in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and even occasionally 60s. Mind you, they're pretty damaged and crippled with arthritis and other things, breakages. But look at the female skeletons. You'll find girls in their teens, their early 20s. You almost never find a pre-end of Stone Age woman over the age of 30. The life expectancy of a woman up until the end of the Stone Age is 21 years, approximately. Why? Because we had an ice age. And at the start of the ice age, there were at least 5 other species of hominids, 4 or 5 at least. Floriensis, the hobbit, Neanderthal, Denisova, and Heidelbergensis. I think Heidelbergensis is still around at that time. And there's a trace in some Pacific island history of another hominid that we've never found any fossils of. There were 5 of us 100,000 years ago, 5 or 6 cousins that we had. By the end of the Ice Age, there's only us. Why? Because 1 or 2 of our ancestors were a little bit more observant than anybody else. And they could correlate that season with that plant and that insect, which meant there were birds there or bees there, and that meant we could get a bit of honeycomb, and with that we have just enough nutrition to live long enough to sire children. We selected for intelligence. When you select for intelligence, you select for a bigger brain. When you select for a bigger brain, you select for a bigger skull. The bigger skull has to pass through a birth passage. A birth passage that has evolved only to take a skull, a baby skull of a certain size. And what happens is, of course, the women and children who can't make that birth happen die. We are the descendants of teenage girls who struggled in the most appalling circumstances and died giving birth to a baby that their sisters or other people tried to look after. They did whatever they could to make sure that that child lives. And because that child lives, you and I are here. And we have lost contact with that reality and that certainty. You know, we are here because they willed it to happen. They looked at us and saw us doing better than them, as your father and your mother all looked at you and wanted you to do better. You know, and there we are with our first world troubles, you know. I'm not as happy as I should be. Just remember where we came from and what the hope was for us. And do not betray that hope. You know, when they were living in caves, they knew that one day you would be living in better circumstances. When they were starving, they knew that you would be smart enough to make sure that you got fed, and your children would do better too. By the way, there is a belief that, in fact, human intelligence is in decline. That really, human intelligence peaks about 22,000 years ago. And that it really is the advent of farming, around about 14,000 years ago, that begins our slow unraveling of intelligence. Because, of course, if you weren't effective as a hunter and as a provider, as part of the group, you died. You did not live long enough to reproduce. Evolution removed you. And now, of course, everyone survives. Every baby survives. You do not have to have the responsibility of bringing up your own children. The state will do that for you. We are, don't get me wrong, I do believe in good medicine and the health and care of children. But we are, like it or not, we are becoming dumber with each generation. That is not a popular view, and it's probably going to be held up as an example of my right-wing radicalist or whatever it is. But it is actually a view that is shared by a number of academics as well. So one of the themes that I would want to talk about is to celebrate the lives of those who really came before us and had the courage of doing whatever it takes so that this child will survive. And I think I think they would be proud of us and puzzled by us. Somebody did say the other day that if an ancient Greek turned up in modern society, he would look around and say, wow, the telephone, wow, the mobile phone, and you do fly to space. Extraordinary, wonderful, wonderful. Why did it take you so long?
We have.
Yeah, I think we have time for one more. Yeah.
All right, she's jonesing to ask the question.
Hope it's not too niche a question, but in Raiders of the Lost Ark, you sang a bit from Gilbert and Sullivan as the character of Sala, and I was wondering if did you ever sing Gilbert and Sullivan at university?
Well, my experiences with the choir, let me see, no. When I was 5, my mother said, would you like to learn the piano? And I said, no, only girls do that sort of thing. Thus demonstrating definitively my stupidity. There was some time in the choir when I was at school. It had nothing to do with Kate being in the choir. There's always generally there's a girl involved, isn't there? But I did sing in The Dream of Gerontius, which is a glorious piece. And of course, being Welsh, my parents were out in Africa, so I spent some of the short holidays in Wales. And Welsh mining towns, they still had the chapel ethic. You know, you went to church 3 times on Sunday, and it was all in Welsh, a language which my parents have been very careful to make sure that I did not speak. Oh, very important, you see, because if you speak with a Welsh accent and you're living in England, it categorizes you. If you want your child to do better, your child must learn to speak English better than the English do. That is still the truth. You know, migrants coming to this country, yes, they want their children to speak good American, regardless of the national language as well. So yes, I sang in the choir, and I had the folk memory of the music of the Welsh language still. The number of words I know in Welsh is really limited. But let me give you the first sentence of the Lord's Prayer in Welsh. And I will try to convey to you what a different language does with something that almost everybody here would know. You'll recall it goes, Our Father, which art in heaven. Now this is the Welsh rendering of it. Ein tad, arwyth an y nefoedd. And you suddenly hear the magic in that. That's not just a prayer. That is an incantation. That is magic. The powerful magic of religion being expressed. And that is awfully good for an actor to know, that enormous dramatic resource. And yes, I have sung in rather badly in 1 or 2 movies. All I can say is that if you're wanting somebody who can sing some filthy rugby songs, I'm your man. No, I didn't sing Gilbert Sullivan. I've listened to it. My great joy in the lockdown, which really crippled and damaged so many people, for me, I was in New Zealand and I had to get back from New Zealand to England. They just suddenly opened up the possibility of actually going all the way through. But I had to do 14 days quarantine. And then immediately after that, they locked down the little island called the Isle of Man where I have a home for a month. So I had 6 weeks of total solitude. Now your heart is going out to me. Poor John, you must have been so alone. Yes. There I am alone in a house with views across the fields, to the sea, to Cumbria in England over there, Scotland over there, and on a very, very clear day, the mountains of Mourne in Ireland there. Only 6 acres to walk in, 22,000 books, about 1,800 classical CDs, a workshop that I can actually get in without anybody saying you should be doing something else. I'm all on my own. Oh, it was hell. It was hell. Let me also add to the gentleman who asked what I do. When I was at university, I sold a perfectly good car for no money that my mother had bought me and bought a disgraceful old Triumph TR2. It was the worst car I've ever had, but I loved it. And I had 13 of them. I learned how to take them apart and even sometimes to put them together. Though don't ask me to build a gearbox, because the ones that I did blew up very quickly. But the other day, I just happened to be in LA and I went along to see the Beverly Hills Car Club, which used to be right beside the Dome, and both are not there anymore, but I tracked down the Beverly Hills Car Club, and there I saw an unfinished project car. I haggled, I got 30% off the price. It was peanuts, really. Why did I do it? Because the body is perfect. I mean, I know about rust buckets because I tried to sell 1 or 2 of them. This is superbly done. And I thought, my first sports car, I'll probably take my license away in the not too distant future for being senile. This is going to be my last sports car. So I'm getting the bits together for that, and I'm going to get in the workshop at Christmas, get my sons over and say, right, this is what we're going to do. It's a simple car, right? This is how you wire it. Of course, first of all, I got to make sure that chassis is straight. What are the chances of finding a 1961 sports car that hasn't been hit in the front? And once it goes hit in the front, then you've got that little dimple in that, Anyway, that'll be the first challenge. But yes, I liked TRs, and I like simple cars. I do not like complicated cars. I don't understand them. When I was a boy out in Africa, we always had to fix our own cars. I remember my father breaking down, losing a clutch once when we were in the bush. Fortunately, we were on a track that occasionally buses passed, and 2 days later, a bus did pass. But in the meantime, we got under the car. It was a Studebaker Lark, as I recall, and he pulled the gearbox off. He'd taken the clutch off, and what he needed now was a clutch. Well, The bus came along, and the bus, being a sensible bus, had a spare bus clutch. That big. Of course, we needed something about that big. So he takes the hacksaw out and he hacks the pads off, the brake linings off, the center plate linings off, the pressure center plate linings off. And then he finds some rivets and some nails, and he knocks them all together, and he gets his file and he fettles it, we put it back in, and we drive 1,000 miles. That's what you did. Can you imagine breaking down these days? You wouldn't even know. I mean, what do you do? I mean, I lift the bonnet of a car, you can't see anything anyway, but if you take the covers off, you still can't make out what the heck that does, or that does, and that does. The wiring is... I have an old BMW 530D 1999, because I'm too cheap to buy a new car. It's got something like about 130 mini computers in it. They talk to each other. That's why the damn battery goes down all the time. Modern cars are increasingly inaccessible to ordinary people. And that's terrifying. I mean, imagine when you've got 500,000-600,000 or 1 million electric cars on the road, and somebody in China presses the hidden code into it, and everyone freezes. Have you ever tried to move an electric car? You can't push it. It weighs 2 tons anyway, but more than that, it's because it's driven by electric motors, you know, you can't shift it. That's going to be a traffic jam. Anyway, I prattle on about passions. Sorry about it.
Oh, no, we love it. We could listen to this all day. But there is another panel that's going to start very soon, and but we've just been honored to have you here to listen to all this. We want to remind you, though, that you can come to the table right over there, and you should come to the table. And you can ask any question you want, and you should definitely get something signed, or take a photo, do all that stuff. But
Or you can just pop by and say
just
hi.
pop by and say hi. Yeah. And it's just been an absolute honor to have you here, to hear these stories, and just to have you with us this whole weekend.
Well, it was wonderful to see one or two women's faces filled with complete and absolute boredom as I talk about cars.
Oh no!
I name no names, follow my eyes.
Well, but before we let you go, let's take a big group family photo if we can get you guys.